Welcome back to this very special podcast. It's actually an educational podcast. I guess I just didn't frame it that way because I was just wanting to share my expertise of being in public relations, communications, and the media, I guess, field or industry. It's so vast for well over 20 years now. Well, not well over. You see, that's a bit of an exaggeration, another thing to spot in content and news and media as we improve our media literacy together. Oh, just over 20 years. It's so easy to do that sort of exaggeration. And actually, that's something that I want to speak about in this episode. So, this is the fourth episode. The first episode, I kind of broke down again in a very informal conversational way. I'm deliberately making it this way. I'm not overly scripting it. I don't want it to come across as rigid. So it's more about sort of inviting somebody into this space of media, digital, and I guess political literacy, but from a lens of somebody who works in the media, so you can kind of read between the lines more. And then as you do that, you'll improve your critical thinking. So the first episode, I talked about how the media, the print publishing industry, how it's owned and how it runs behind the scenes. And I'm going to do more in depth. Number two was all the ways, and I couldn't remember number two when I was doing three, but number two is all the ways that you are bombarded with messages through all the various channels of communication: Snapchat, TikTok, your phone, and as well as other means. There's another thing I want to talk about at some point, which I will, and that's just how many politicians now are in positions of sort of media communications where they have a spot on a radio or sort of a commentary show. That's very interesting. It's very interesting. And then the third thing was, now I've forgotten the third thing. I cannot believe this. Just completely lost track. That's why it might be a good idea to script, but I just really want to make this very much accessible, especially to young people, and that's why it is educational content. I want to share all my nuggets of experience, skills, expertise, being a chartered communications practitioner, as well as having been in the media and content creation space. I've worked as a journalist as well. I used to be a student journalist whilst reading politics at university. And then I did a bit of freelance journalism, but I used to be on newsroom floors, or in newsrooms, let's just put it that way. And I worked with sort of multiple print publications in London, and it was very eye-opening. I mean, the big names, think of the big names, it's where I worked. And this isn't me sort of like saying so I could like spill some tea, although I only have a flat white here, but I have learnt a great deal just through osmosis, not even just working with managing editors, people behind the scenes, HR, marketing, ad sales. What else? Project management, corporate diversity and inclusion. I've worked as a publicity press office, as a public relations person hired as an employee, also as a consultant for different brands, different industries. I did fashion, I did NGO, worked for entrepreneurs, did a lot of copywriting, so much copywriting. So there's so much that I have done. I didn't realize as I was doing it that it was going to sort of bring me to this place where I would be able to share this sort of ability to read between the lines, and it's such an important skill, and it's important for us to spot things that are a little bit inconsistent. Sort of like, you need to verify it. You can't be absolutely sure if it's accurate. And that means you've got to be comfortable with even challenging your own assumptions. I think overall, this sort of like state of mind that we must have is one that is not only wanting to challenge the status quo, to investigate more and to inquire more, but also to be quite comfortable in challenging our own assumptions and our own sort of value system as well. And it's something that I've done for a very long time for myself, on and off. I won't say consistently, otherwise I would just be this like critical thinking guru. There's no such thing as a guru, just saying. I might offend, only because I think when we blindly follow something, and you might be a religious, spiritual person, you do have a guru and you might be offended by that. But I think it's really important that we think critically about things that we are hearing. And I think that it's possible to follow or have a guide, have a mentor who's like a guru, who has sort of demonstrated that they are absolutely legit and who are transparent as well. And and the reason why I say legitimate and transparent is because we are sort of witnessing this self-development, personal development industry just blow up and balloon up with so many sort of self titled gurus who claim to have achieved credibility, accomplished things where we can't verify. And not only do they then require you to follow them, listen to them, in order for them to make their money, but they also want you to buy into their courses, very expensive courses, and do all of those things. And so we have to be so alert, so much more than we've ever had to be before. And so that's why I wanted to do this episode. I wanted to talk about this sort of level of alertness, which is so important if we want to survive a time of such high level and covert, high level, sort of explicit, and as well as implicit and sort of in your face and covert propaganda. And propaganda can be done by an entrepreneur, not just a politician. There's so many people who are public facing that can sell you something and use propaganda to sell you it or to convince you to do something. The third episode was actually about copywriting and ways through which entities will try and convince you to do something. There'll always be some sort of call to action, some objective in the sort of information that you are reading, even if it's sometimes just a paragraph. Maybe it's just a sideline to a bigger article. And it might be completely sincere, and it might not be a negative thing. It could be very positive. It could be used for good, but it's also not used for good. And so after speaking first episode about the way sort of print publications, etc., are managed behind the scenes, and then talking about how you're bombarded with messages and then how those messages are written, this episode I really wanted to do okay, and why is it so important? So this is even more for me to sort of double down on the why it's so important to remain alert. So let me tell you a little sort of anecdote, if you like, and this is from my own current experience. So for a long time I've wanted to progress professionally, and I whilst I think I have invested a great deal in my creative life over the years, whether it was dancing, semi-professionally and professionally, teaching and yoga teaching, or in more recent years getting into painting, abstract pieces, and then even just before that getting involved in music and music production, podcast production. I've felt quite satisfied with that sort of, I guess, those outlets. And being a creative can help you to zoom out more. I'm not quite sure how, well, I'm sure if I continue to talk about it, but it'll be another episode, I will be able to share exactly how and why that happens, that you're able to have that sort of more open mindset, that sort of like zooming out. And it then allows you to engage with information, political arguments in a little bit more of a critical way, which is quite helpful so that you don't fall for anything or get dragged into tribal arguments, and and also so that you don't um, perpetuate those tribal arguments, that you don't spout them at the dinner table. You got to be responsible with what you're saying. But there was something else that was missing, and the thing that was missing was I wanted to engage more with the different arguments and perspectives, and to come to different conclusions, newer conclusions, or even solutions. And as a professional public relations practitioner, I get to do this as a discipline, and as a consultant, I get to do it with entities where I am having to map out all the different factors. So, who are the interested parties? Who are the stakeholders, if you like? They're called stakeholders. Who are, what are the different perspectives? What's the geopolitical stuff, or what's the economical, monetary, sort of like consideration? So I kind of have to map all of these things out to get an understanding of what the problem is, or what the issue is, and then start to come to an idea for a strategy and how to communicate it. And I thought, gosh, I really want to get more in depth, because I love this sort of holistic way of looking at things. And even when I've been vlogging, I talk about being a holistic person. And I'm never, like, niching has always been a thing for me, because I'm just not focused on just the one thing. My lens does that. So my thing is to be holistic. So that is my niche. So when I came across this thing called systems thinking, I was like, wow. It wasn't even a push, it was like a slow coming out. It was like, ooh, this is nice. This is really like, what's great about it is that there's not just one way of doing systems thinking. Systems thinking is looking at something holistically, being really reflective in your thinking, and being a critical thinker. So I went for it. I was for like a year looking into professional sponsorship for a master's. So it's an MSc to become a systems thinking practitioner. Um, I've just done it independently because I thought, gosh, you know what? I'm all about investing in myself. And this sort of process, as I've sort of like been progressing in the studying, this process of zooming out and the different ways that you can do it, and that academics and practitioners have actually spent years since the 60s, 70s, actually put together ways to do this in order to look at a complex, challenging, or even a messy situation. It's incredible. And I'm like, every time I read another page from the reading material, or do some more research or some exercises, I'm like, what? Why isn't this taught? This can impact every part of your life in such a positive way. It can help you to problem solve in so many ways. So why isn't this being taught? And it's actually part of critical thinking. It's this ability to zoom all the way out. And so that's why I wanted to say with this episode, it's so important to be alert, because look at any problem or issue that you're facing, whether it's in your control or not in your control. Just see if you can do like a scatter mind map kind of a diagram, just whatever the problem is at the center, and it's like a spray diagram almost, and just to draw lines, and just all the things that impact this problem that you're facing, all the things that are sort of useful considerations. So as an example, I'm always late for the bus. Let's just say you're always late for the bus. So it's when you wake up, how you're sleeping, is your how you're getting ready an issue, is what you're wearing and trying to, are the decisions and choices you're making every single morning an issue? Let's go, what happened the night before? What about your route on the way to the bus? Maybe the bus is a problem, maybe it's a timetabling issue. Is there a motivation issue? What are you getting the bus for? Where are you trying to get to? Was this the best option? What else is making you late? What is late? Could you start at a later time? Why can't you start at a later time if it keeps happening over and over? Is it again quality of sleep? Is it health? Is it so you're jotting all these things down. Now let's put in the sort of external factors. There could be, oh, it could be your partner or your family member or somebody who's like getting in the way of your morning routine. It could be a child, it could be a dependent. What are the factors there? Oh, depends on how well they've slept or what they need from you in the morning and how that's going to impact you and your mood and your energy. So this is so, just do a zoom out and just sort of take all of these things in. That's sort of like an initial step. And so when we're looking at political issues, we can do the same thing. Well, let's do a zoom out, and you could just do it mentally. You don't have to you don't have to be a complete expert or academic to be able to know exactly how to populate that diagram. You can, well you do, but you don't have to be in order to make a start and to cultivate this thinking yourself. You could say, right, what is this side saying? What is that side saying? But there's other perspectives as well. Let's fill this all in. What motivates all these perspectives? So what's their agenda? What's their objective? Where do they link? Oh, is that a left thing? Is that a right thing? Okay. Or it could be about a rap beef, a battle. It could be between Kendrick Lamar and Drake. And it could be like, okay, what is it about the fans? Why do they go so hard for Drake? Why do they go so hard for Kendrick? Is it a thing that people have an issue with OVO? Is it something about the producer? Or is it that they have loyalty to the production? Is it that when Pusha T and Drake were battling, that people were just like, get off Drake's back because of what Pusha did? Why did Pusha did what he did? You're starting to map out what else is going on, and then hang on, who's Kendrick aligned with? Why does he say the things that he does? Was Drake to make a comment about Kendrick's so-called woke lyrics? Just before you know it, you've brought in Hollywood or Hollyweird, you've brought in billionaires, you've brought in political statements, you brought in culture stuff, colorism, Canada, Toronto versus America. You brought in all these factors in order to not necessarily make your mind up definitively, but to become more informed about the situation, so that you don't just simply say at a conversation, nah, Kendrick was Kendrick's the GOAT and he totally won with Drake, or no, I'm gonna say that such and such can defend / resist no matter what, or whataboutism, which happens a lot. So that's why this is the why. This is the why, because if you don't do this, you miss out on all the bits of information, and they're not just nuances. It's not just a nuanced thing. Actual facts, different perspectives, actual things that are going on also that you won't hear about. Why? Because the communicators, the mass communicators, the people who dominate the communications channels will only expose you to a certain amount of information. And then what will happen is anyone with an alternative view will be branded as conspiracy theorists. And there are conspiracy theorists, put that on your map. Real conspiracy theorists, or people with alternative perspectives who actually have facts and research and study and all the rest of it. So map that out as well, because if you give up and say, oh, you know what, like, there's always someone on TikTok saying something different, I just can't, you know what, that's fine, take a break. But the zooming out and looking at things more critically can also be a break. It can be refreshing. It can help you to feel less panicked, less anxious, because you have more awareness. And this kind of awareness is such a gift that you're giving yourself, because we are living in times where everything is so public and is so constantly like information is propagandized almost, events are, and it's constantly taking you on some kind of a, you know, direction, switching you. Commentators will take you here. Oh, now they are emotional. Now you're coming down here, and you just need some respite. And then you're watching a Netflix thing and you're binging, and there's a political message in there, and you don't realize, and you've just taken it in. And now you're more influenced to watch this commentator over here. Before you know it, it's like, yo, where was I in this whole thing? Or like, where? Where was I in this whole thing? Completely lost my grounding, my awareness, my thinking, my critical thinking. This is the why. This is why I'm doing this podcast and why I want to provide this educational content and challenge my own assumptions as well. I challenge my own assumptions all the time, and I have them challenged in the comment section. I have some merch coming out, and one of them is going to be a cap with biased written on it. Because we can't escape it. Being aware of your own biases as well as others, sort of like looking at, oh, why are they thinking that way? What's their bias in this? Because it'd be ridiculous to think that we could be completely impartial. It's just not. But can we strive for some kind of neutral thinking, critical thinking? Yes. And I think as we strive for it, that's how we're able to then not be so attached to the things that we are attached to. Because remember, we are, of course, all living in this sort of personal construct of a worldview. We need to sort of like deconstruct it, dismantle it a little bit. Still have your values, still have your beliefs, but just, be a little bit more open. I think as you start to do one or the other, they kind of all sort of happen in concert, in parallel. And before you know it, you just feel like you know yourself a little bit more, know a little bit more about the world around you. And you won't be so easily pulled into something without your consent, perhaps, or you won't fall for something so easily. And it happens to all of us, and it happens to the best of us. But this is part of us doing our sort of like self-protection, if you like. This is the sort of personal growth that I think is so important. And I very much value the fact that you have given your time to listen to this. You can come back for more. There's more content here, and you are also more than welcome to join the Inner Circle on YouTube or my Patreon. It's up to you. But please engage with this. If you have questions or even pushbacks, let me know, and I'll see you in the next episode.